The moment the mask seemed to slip wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive. It was subtle, almost invisible. But once you notice it, it becomes difficult to ignore. Because this isn't about one awkward interview or one uncomfortable exchange. It's about a recurring pattern. A series of moments where Meghan Markle stood before microphones, cameras, and influential audiences, only to face questions that appeared remarkably simple. These weren't questions demanding legal precision or carefully crafted public relations messaging. They were straightforward prompts that invited clear, personal answers. Yet, time after time, the responses seemed to drift in unexpected directions. Instead of clarity, viewers were often left with lengthy explanations that many critics felt never fully addressed the original question. What began as simple conversations sometimes transformed into answers that sounded polished, but left audiences wondering whether the question had actually been answered. It begins in Washington, D.C., at the Fortune Summit, a room filled with founders, executives, and accomplished business leaders. Meghan Markle takes the stage in what appears to be the perfect setting. The moderator asks what seems like a straightforward question. How do you separate constructive criticism from background noise? It's the kind of question that offers an opportunity to provide a memorable insight. Instead, the response moves through themes of protection, energy, and personal boundaries before arriving at a familiar refrain, focusing on the support received from others. To some viewers, the answer felt less like a direct response and more like a shift in focus away from the question itself. As the discussion continues, some observers feel the atmosphere subtly changes. Rather than bringing clarity, the exchange raises additional questions. When the conversation turns toward measurable outcomes, analytics, and results, concrete details appear limited. In a room where business success is typically defined by numbers and measurable achievements, critics argue that the absence of specifics became increasingly noticeable. The next stop is a podcast interview. The setting is relaxed. The tone is friendly. The opportunity seems ideal. The question is generous. If you could rewrite your public story, what would you change? For many public figures, this is often a chance to acknowledge mistakes, reflect on past experiences, or demonstrate personal growth. Instead, the response emphasizes the responsibility of others to present the truth more accurately. Rather than focusing inward, the conversation shifts toward how the public narrative has been shaped externally. The reaction from commentators was largely predictable. Many viewed the answer as another example of avoiding personal accountability. Another moment draws attention because of an apparent contradiction. In a 2016 interview, Meghan confidently stated that she would never build a lifestyle brand around expensive luxury products, describing items like high-priced candles as something she considered excessive and inconsistent with the image she wanted to project. She described herself as someone who preferred approachable, attainable products. Years later, luxury lifestyle products became closely associated with her brand. Whether this represents personal growth, changing business priorities, or a genuine contradiction is left for audiences to decide. But the comparison inevitably raises questions about consistency. Then comes perhaps one of the simplest interview questions imaginable. Sitting comfortably with a friendly interviewer, Meghan is asked, "Do you think you'll be married forever?" For most people, the answer could be a single word, yes. She does answer affirmatively, but then the conversation continues into compliments about her husband, his appearance, and the qualities she admires. For some viewers, the extended explanation felt unnecessary for such a straightforward question, reinforcing the perception that direct answers often become longer, more elaborate narratives. At this point, the recurring theme becomes increasingly noticeable. It's no longer about one isolated interview. It's about repetition. Direct questions are frequently followed by answers that expand into broader discussions before circling back, if they return to the original point at all. The pattern continues in the kitchen. A lifestyle brand centered around food, entertaining, and home cooking creates a simple expectation. When asked about a favorite dish to prepare, audiences naturally expect a specific meal. Instead, the answer explores preferences, ingredients, flavors, herbs, and general inspirations without ever clearly identifying a single favorite dish. For viewers waiting for a simple response, the moment became another example frequently cited in online discussions. Then the pattern reaches another level. During an International Women's Day panel, surrounded by accomplished speakers, Meghan is invited to briefly share a story about advocating for women during her childhood. The well-known dish soap story begins. What starts as a short anecdote gradually becomes longer, revisiting familiar details multiple times. As the story continues, some audience members appear to grow restless. Eventually, Brooke Shields steps in with humor, shifting the conversation forward and changing the energy in the room. To many commentators, the interruption felt less like a planned transition and more like an attempt to reset the pace of the discussion after the audience's attention had begun to drift. Later discussions of the same story often focused less on its message and more on its length. Critics argued that what was intended to demonstrate determination instead became an example of over-explaining a relatively simple point. Another memorable moment arrives in a bookstore. The setting suggests reflection, literature, and thoughtful conversation. Early in the interview, Meghan casually mentions that she hasn't been reading many books recently, instead spending time with parenting resources and language learning materials. Moments later, however, the discussion turns towards storytelling, personal narratives, identity, and the importance of owning one's voice. The ideas themselves sound polished and carefully expressed. Yet some viewers felt that the earlier admission created an unexpected contrast, making the message feel less convincing than the setting implied. The conversation eventually shifts toward criticism. Asked about mixed reactions to her work, another opportunity for a direct response presents itself. Instead of discussing specific critiques, the answer explores the motivations of critics themselves, suggesting that public reactions may not always reflect genuine opinions. For some observers, this represented another familiar pattern. Rather than engaging directly with criticism, the focus appeared to move toward questioning those offering it. The discussion then turns to motherhood. Meghan describes recording bedtime stories so her children can hear her voice while she is away. The intention comes across as thoughtful and heartfelt. Yet some commentators argue that presenting such efforts as extraordinary may not resonate with families who experience separation without similar resources or opportunities. Whether audiences find the gesture meaningful or disconnected largely depends on their own perspective, but it became another topic of debate. Finally comes perhaps the most personal question of all: what does self-care look like? Instead of describing a personal routine or habit, the answer broadens into caring for others, supporting family, and giving to those around her. Once again, some viewers noticed that the response expanded beyond the question itself, ending in a place different from where it began. Taken individually, each of these moments may seem relatively small. But when viewed together, critics argue that they reveal a consistent communication style, one where simple questions often receive broad, carefully framed answers rather than concise responses. 10 interviews. 10 opportunities to provide straightforward answers. 10 moments that continue to spark debate among audiences online. Whether these exchanges reflect thoughtful communication, media pressure, or a tendency to over-explain remains open to interpretation. But they have undeniably fueled discussion. And perhaps that is the most intriguing question of all: if the simplest questions generate this much conversation, what happens when the questions become far more difficult?